welcome back and happy Valentine's Day. Yeah, I'm posting this on Valentine's Day, so I hope you guys have a wonderful Valentine's Day. I'm actually wearing a shirt with a heart on it. Where is the heart? It's way down here. It's from Target like forever ago, but I like the fact that it has like a little red heart and I love the color blue. So hope you guys have a great loving Valentine's Day. If you don't have a Valentine, you're your own Valentine anyways. I wanted to do a video on, I feel like I was just like, but we're gonna keep rolling with it. I want to do a video on my top 5 best and like most used palettes, and then my top 5 worst. Now when I say worst, these palettes aren't horrible. They're just, there's something about them that I don't love, that I don't use, and when I'm doing a eyeshadow palette declutter video coming up soon, these are probably going to be the first to go. So all the palettes that I love, I'll tell you why I love them, and all the palettes that I don't love, I'll tell you why I don't like them. So I'm going to go one, the other, so it's not just all love, all hate. I'm going to do one palette I love, one palette I don't love. You see? Alright, let's start on a positive note. Let's start with something that I love. This palette is probably no surprise to anyone. I think when this baby dropped, everyone was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. Let me tell you the reason that I love this palette. It's a beautiful warm tone palette. I've talked about it a ton on my channel because the eyeshadows from Anastasia are extremely incredible with blending. They're soft and they just go and blend into the eye and build upon each other in the most magnificent way. So I love this palette because it has majority of matte shades and it has these reddish pink tones and this orange. You can really create some depth and a really nice warm look. I love using this if I just want an all over matte eye, because the colors just blend and build on top of each other so beautifully. But if you want to add a little shimmer to it, it does have these 2 shades right here that are shimmery and they're just beautiful. But besides that, I mean, this color right here in red ochre, Venetian red, these shades are just, they're so nice, and like I said, they blend and they're pigmented. So this palette is just a go-to for me. It has this really nice dark deep brown, but the palette overall is just beautiful. You guys, my nails in this video, like, I have little stubby little numpkins. And I'm wearing Kathleen Light's new nail polish to celebrate her birthday in Des Expensive, the K polish. It's a really pretty glitter polish, but just try and ignore my nails. Okay, since that's a palette I love, now we're gonna go to a palette that I don't love. This is the Violet Voss Pro Drenched Metal Eyeshadow Palette. Now, I typically love Violet Voss eyeshadow palettes, but this one just didn't do it for me. The eyeshadows in this are bright and bold and really, I thought would be like super beautiful, and they swatched incredibly well. Like, I do have a few swatches, well, that blue not really, but the other one swatched so beautifully. But then when you apply them to the eye, I just feel like I tried to do a look with this Mermaid Vixen, I'm So Fancy, and this color Shade down here, and I felt like they just kind of all blended in with one another, and they weren't as vibrant or weren't as like sort of like metallic or metal. Like when you say drenched metal, I'm thinking there's gonna be like a little bit more of like a zazzoom, and they're just like Makeup Geek's foiled eyeshadows. See, this is all eyeshadow palettes. If I could talk about favorite eyeshadows, that'd be a different, I'd have like my create your own palettes. But anyways, these just didn't do it for me, and for that reason this is like a little bit of a flop palette for me. I don't use it, so when I do my declutter, this is probably gonna be something that I pass along, because maybe somebody else would love it if they're not looking for the same thing that I'm looking for in a metallic eyeshadow. If you watch me, this palette's no surprise. This is the Laura Mercier Artist 2, I think it's called, eyeshadow palette. I adore this thing. I have a backup of it because I got nervous that it wasn't going to be anymore, so I bought a backup. The color Fresco is the most beautiful crease shade. It looks like it's not going to be anything, but these are so pigmented and buttery, and this is just like the perfect like mauve transition shade. It's a beautiful like brown. It has this like dusty blush shade sort of like quality to it. What I really like about this palette is this brown is a really pretty, it's called Truffle. It's a really nice dark brown, but it's not too warm and it's not too cool. And so I love that for all over the eye. I've done so many looks with this. This color in Espresso Bean is a deep, dark chocolate brown. It's not a black, but it's a great alternative. If black is a little bit too harsh for you, I love using something like this. But the colors in here that are just so stunning are what, especially when I do a purple eye. I have like greenish blue eyes, so purples really enhance my eye color. But these purples are so, so pretty. This deep dark color and this one, they blend so well. I can't say enough good things about this eyeshadow palette. I love wearing it. Let me just get some swatches for you. I love wearing it, and I love the color selection in this palette because, like I said, when I'm looking for really beautiful purple shades, this is always my go-to. When I'm traveling, I really, really love this palette. It also has like a really great matte highlight called Vanilla Nuts, and every time you say the word Vanilla Nuts, you can't not laugh. Like, who names an eyeshadow Vanilla Nuts? Laura Mercier. She apparently has a sense of humor. An eyeshadow palette that I do not... Listen, I don't think this is the worst eyeshadow palette, but I definitely don't think this is the best. When I first started using this, I really did like it at first. This is the Urban Decay Naked Ultimate Basics. Now, a lot of these like full matte palettes came out around the same time. This was one that I was on the fence on including in my worst, but the reason that I will include it is it has a lot of these matte shades in it. But they all kind of like, these are very, very similar in, they're just a slight variation. And I feel like they could have done a little bit more differentiation in some of the shades. This is a palette that I've used several times, and this shade right here is really beautiful and Instinct, and this shade right here, Lethal. This is a great combination, but when they start to blend, I feel like I have this color in a lot of different palettes. But when they start to blend out, they just kind of, they're not as buttery and creamy as some of the other shades that are very similar to them in other palettes that I have. And they don't get patchy, but they feel like a drier formula. And so I just don't reach for it enough. So this is why I'm including this, is probably a palette that I'm going to pass on or declutter. So I'm saying it's a worst. But you have to understand, when I keep something for a really long time, like I typically, if I think something's really, really horrible, like horrible, I get rid of it right away. So this is something that I was like on the fence about, but I'm just gonna say it's not my favorite. So since I said something about the Urban Decay palette, I wanted to point out that Urban Decay has some of my favorite palettes. It was honestly difficult for me to choose between the Naked 2 and the Naked 1 palette, the original, but the Urban Decay Naked 2 palette is one of my favorite palettes when I'm going for a cool tone look. Every time I think to myself, you should wear a cool tone look today, I pull this palette out because I love the way that it looks and I love the color options that it has. It has this color Tease, which is like that mauve-y shade, which I find was very similar in the other one. This is a little bit more gray and cooler tone than in the basic. But this is a gorgeous like matte crease color that is perfect for transition. I love that it has some of these like bronzy shades, but they're on the cooler side of a bronze instead of on a warmer side. So Snakebite and Suspect, they're just really beautiful shades. But this shade in Verve, which is like a silver, is just like one of my favorites. If I'm gonna do like a cool tone eye, I'll do that, and then I'll do this color right here, Pistol, which is like this gunmetal shade. I mean, I can't say enough good things. I love every single shade in this palette, every single one. Half Baked is a beautiful golden shade, and then Foxy is a great highlight shade that for like a matte highlight, and then Booty Call is the inner corner highlight in this, or like if you're gonna highlight your brow bone, the shimmer shade. The whole palette is just really, really beautiful, and I love the color selection, and every single time I have a look, I love it. So I'm going to be starting a series where I'm going to start doing looks with all the Naked palettes, because I feel like those are palettes that a lot of people own, and not a lot of people talk about them anymore, but I'm still a lover over here. I'm fighting for these Naked palettes. Okay, for a palette that I don't really love, the Tartelette in Bloom palette. Tarte's eyeshadows have come a long way. Like their new Pro palette, I really like the colors in that and I like the formula, but their eyeshadows, but prior to that, I don't know. They just did not have what I was looking for. This palette, initially, I thought I would love it because of the shade Firecracker, and it is a very, very beautiful shade. But the rest of the palette is very dull to me, and the eyeshadows are a little bit dry. I don't find myself reaching for this palette because it just is very basic and I don't feel like you can get a lot of looks from it. I feel like it's like a one-trick pony. Tarte just, like I said, recently started to create palettes where they had a different formula in the eyeshadows. I felt like they don't skip as much, they're not as dry. So I feel like they kind of got it together. But this Tartelette in Bloom, with the exception of that one shade, I don't really find myself wearing it, gravitating towards it, and that's why, because I just feel like there are better options. It's kind of basic, and I feel like I can do that one look, and then like that's all I can get from this palette. And when you have this many shades in the palette, I feel like I would like to feel, it doesn't inspire me. That's the bottom line. I don't feel inspired by it. Okay, I know I've showed a lot of neutral eyeshadow palettes, but when I'm looking for color, this Urban Decay Full Spectrum palette is my go-to. I love the electric palette, but I like this one even better because this just has so many more options. It has these super bright colors, and I've done a look with the yellows and the oranges in this palette. They're extremely pigmented, like really, really nicely pigmented, and they're beautiful. I love how it has like these pinks and coral and greens, and it's just like so many really, really pretty colors. And they blend really well, they wear really well on the eyes. I think this is a great palette to have in your collection because if you're someone who really loves, like, let me just swatch a few of these. If you're someone who really loves, this was from the other palette, but the rest of these. If you're someone who really loves color, I think that you'll really like having that palette as an option to add a pop of color, to add color when you want to spice it up. If you're like me and you have like a lot of neutral colors in eyeshadows, which I have all neutrals basically, this is just something, like I said, when I thought about it, to break it up, I pull this out a lot and I'll add that yellow to my crease, or I'll add the purple on the lash line because it's such a vibrant purple shade. I'll add this in my crease or on my bottom lash line, or this darker shade right here. This color in Faded is a really beautiful like lilac. So I just feel like it has a lot if you're looking to spice it up and add a little color. Okay, for a palette that really disappointed me, the Lorac Pro 3 palette. I had such high hopes for this palette because the Lorac Pro 1 is like was my jam for a really long time. So I felt like these shades right here were just very, very basic. They were light and they all kind of did the same thing. There wasn't a lot of variety. These are both really, really light, and they're the only like real transition colors in the palette. They were nice, but it's like gives you so many like light transition colors, and then like a dark brown and a black. The bottom row is really what disappointed me. These shades right here are all very similar. There's only one color shade kind of down here, and that's that amethyst color, and it's nothing special. They don't really have very much of a sheen on them, and this is the shimmer row and this is the matte row, which is how I like the palettes that are set up. But I just feel like this is literally nothing special. These shades, when you apply them, like when I swatch them, they're beautiful. But when I go to apply them, they just, on the eye, like this one right here that I thought would have the most like attraction, that's right there. And it just doesn't come through onto the eye. This shade right here in Medallion, it's like crumbly. I don't even know if you can see it. It's crumbly. It doesn't apply. It like literally just crumbles everywhere, and so I was just like, no, this palette just did not work for me at all. and I was really disappointed in it. Like, that had crumbles everywhere. Like, nothing even showed up on that last eyeshadow. Very disappointed in this palette. So since I was talking how much I'm disappointed, I do want to say this is my last favorite one for my top 5 favorites. I love the original. It gets really messy. This is a very well used and loved palette. I love this because the nude shade, it's just super duper metallic and nice. It has that top row of mattes, which I feel like have great variation in them. You have the deeper, darker colors over here. You have this mauve shade, which is just a beautiful like ooh, I went into the pink too. Beautiful transition. You have a light matte pink. You have another transition color, and then these 2 lighter shades. They're all super duper pigmented. I'm talking super pigmented. This nude shade is super duper metallic and beautiful. And I feel like, I mean, just even the cream color up here, or that was white. I mean, extremely pigmented. I know I can count on this palette. Every time I wear it, I love the look. It has beautiful gold down here, a light bronze, a really pretty pewter shade, and they all translate beautifully on the eye. I feel like I can do so many different looks with this palette and still love every single look, and they all look different. So this was like one of my very first most used favorite palettes. When they came out with this, I just used and used and used it. I had to like tell myself, put it down, Laura. But if you're wanting to buy a really nice everyday palette, I really do recommend this one. Okay, so for a worst, this is not horrible, but the IT Cosmetics Superhero palette is just a little bit of a flop for me. I like the idea of it, but when I go to put it on, it doesn't do anything for me. There's hardly any matte shades, so you don't really get a transition. It doesn't inspire me. Like, when I look inside this palette, it doesn't inspire me to do anything. And the shades just kind of blend away. Like, they're pigmented upon swatching, but when I apply them to my eye, they kind of blend away. There just wasn't a lot of options, and this just didn't inspire me. The eyeshadows performed all right, but I felt like, again, they blended in to just all one look, and then as I blended, they almost like kind of blended away and looked muddy, and I didn't like it. So I do love IT Cosmetics because they do have, it says eye transforming anti-aging super palette. So it does have like a technology in it that, you know, that has anti-aging ingredients infused in the eyeshadows, and I appreciate that about IT Cosmetics, that they're always trying to think of skincare. But this palette was just, it's just not used for me because I feel like it just doesn't inspire me, and I have to reach into other palettes to kind of get a look from it. Alright, so that is it for my top 5 best and top 5 worst, which I'm going to call them top 5 most used, top 5 that I'm probably going to declutter. For eyeshadow palettes, let me know some of your favorites down below if you didn't see or hear me talk about them. Some of your favorite eyeshadow palettes, or maybe even some of your least favorite ones. But I like to know about your favorites so I know to buy them, or if I don't have them already in my collection. I'm just curious about what palettes people gravitate towards the most. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do so before you leave so that you can be part of the family, and click that little bell so that you don't miss one of my videos. When I upload, it will let you know that I've uploaded a video. Hopefully you guys all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Mwah.